myself. My name's Jeremy. I'm one of the co-founders of Benny. I actually started my career as an economist. I did a lot of research on social safety nets, then started a few nonprofits that were focused on helping governments and nonprofits and others run better social safety net programs. And then a couple of years ago, decided to see if there was ways we could use technology to help people access social safety nets a little bit better. And that's what Benny is. I've kept my presentation pretty short, so hopefully you all will pepper me with lots of questions as we go, or you'll have an extra 5 or 10 minutes for coffee between the next sessions. But let me tell you a little bit about us. Just to start, this may be something most of you are, let me click up here, are familiar with, but just to give you a quick refresher about Social Security disability benefits, which is what Benny helps people apply for. Basically, Social Security will pay monthly cash payments to people that are between $1,000 and $4,000 who are unable to earn more than a minimum amount, about $1,600 per month, due to a medical disability. To be qualified, you have to meet medical criteria that document that disability and inability to work on account of those conditions. And then also you have to meet certain financial requirements. There's 2 programs, there's SSI and SSDI. SSI is targeted at people with limited finances, so limited assets, limited income, of course. SSDI is more like retirement benefits early if you become disabled. It's tied to your work credits and how much you've paid into the Social Security system. It's a pretty important program. So about 15 million people are on disability benefits. That's about 6% of the working age population. That percentage and number has really grown quite a lot over the last few decades as changes to the social safety net system and changes in the labor market have driven this. And it really is, I would say, one of the biggest aspects of our current social safety net. It's the largest cash benefit that anyone can get. And for many millions of people, this is the income that they're relying on, given that they're unable to work. The program is really designed to cover 2 different types of situations, which I'll illustrate with a few of the folks we've worked with. So one is people who have experienced some temporary acute medical and economic shock, really. So this is Jessica. She was one of our earlier clients. She had an emergency surgery that didn't go well. Her urinary line was busted. She had a whole bunch of complications from that. And you can see what she says. She ended up with a lot of pain, being unable to do just really basic things like lean over to cut her toenails. Obviously, if you're not cutting your toenails, you're not working. She wasn't getting income. You can see that became a huge challenge, not being able to go to the store and really get the things that she needed. The other type of profile you see applying for benefits is people who have much more sustained chronic conditions. So this is Debbie. She was another one of the people we worked with early on. She's 61, so she was actually approaching retirement age, but has some chronic longer-term conditions. She had kidney disease and recurring migraines for years and years. Had this issue with her knee, which then really limited her mobility. You can see she's saying she has pretty constant pain, unable to sit or stand for very long. Also, due to the migraines, not able to even look at his computer screen for long at all either. So, given the type of situation that people are facing when they need to apply for benefits, as you might expect, it's really life-changing for people who get those benefits. So this is a little more statistical than personal, but all of these points here are based on academic research. So what you see is when people get access to benefits, they're eating more regularly, they have stable housing, they're not being foreclosed on. So you see all those personal benefits in terms of just greater stability and just having a little bit of income, right? Makes a huge difference. You also actually see the benefits spill over into the medical space. So with a more stable situation, people are taking more advantage of preventative care. You'll see things like self-reported pain goes down, self-reported symptoms go down. So there are these medical spillovers from just having a little bit of income when you really don't have very much. Some other really interesting studies out there show there's broader social and community benefits from receiving these benefits. So This is a pretty interesting study that shows that when younger adults get access to benefits, over their lifetime, they're going to earn about $5,000 more per year than people who didn't get access to those benefits. That's after deducting the actual value of the benefit. Just having that income when you need it, having that safety net, helps for your future education, job stability, the whole thing. So you just have a much better longer term outcome if you have that safety net to rely on. Similarly, at a community level, a really interesting study showed that when it became harder to access disability benefits, you see an increase in property crime in those communities. So conversely, when you have those benefits, that's going to go down. So really good, individual and social, positive outcomes from accessing these benefits, but it's really hard to apply. So this is a photo from an Oakland, California Social Security office. You can't even see disability benefits here. It's actually in the lower right, that big stack of papers in the lower right is the application for disability benefits. It's not a great angle, but it's pretty thick. The application that most people have to go through is about 76 pages. In contrast to W-2 to do your taxes is 2 pages. Then people are going to get additional forms. That's just the base. So it's pretty intimidating, and we see that in the people we talk to in the stories they share. So this is Jessica. She realized about the program. She learned about the program, realized she needed to apply, and just told us, "Hey, I don't get the process. I don't know where to start. I don't know how to get going. I just need a little bit of direction." Then Debbie actually did get her application in, and she was denied. They told her she could get another customer service job, which is a little bit crazy if she can't sit, stand, or look at a computer screen. And learning more about her case, this is pretty common, is she had made some mistakes in how she filled out the application that got her denied at that initial stage. And it's hard, right? You only do this once in your life. A tax form, sure, maybe I get it a little wrong the first year and I do it again. This is a really important process that people are only doing once. And it's quite confusing and it's quite hard. And that really is reflected in what you see in national statistics for these programs. So we did a bunch of early research a couple of years ago when we were started. And what we saw is that about 35% of people, so up to 2 million people, don't even start or don't complete an application, even though they actually have a disability that's interfering with their ability to work. So there's a real top of funnel problem in people even starting this application. It's intimidating. You don't know how to start, how to get going. For the people who do get through the application, it actually takes about 6 months to get a decision. Social Security is unfortunately quite slow processing these currently. Most of them are rejected. So 60% of people, even if you meet those financial criteria, actually are not approved at that initial application stage. Many of them are later approved, and so they were rejected just to some kind of silly mistake. I'll tell you a little bit more about the kind of things we see and how we try and prevent them. So a lot of people do get denied due to a very preventable reason. The other really common mistake we see is you get a rejection letter. It's official from Social Security. Doesn't make a lot of sense. A lot of legalese about your case and your justification, and people give up. But actually, you have the right to get your case reviewed and appeal it. And the outcomes are actually quite good at the appeal stage. About 50% of appeals are ultimately approved. So that's another mistake people do make. And really, not getting approved is really unfortunate. So currently, it takes about 2 years to process an appeal for a disability case. By definition, you're not working. You have zero income for these 2 years. About 500,000 applicants every year are waiting years to get a decision. People are going bankrupt. They're dying while they're waiting for benefits. So it's really not a good outcome if you have to appeal your case, if you could have gotten approved at the start. So that's really what Benny is trying to do is solve these problems throughout this cycle. We're trying to make it easier and more approachable to help people get started, get their application in. We're trying to help them avoid mistakes that could lead to a rejection. And then we're also trying to make sure that they see their case all the way through. If they've got a good case, they need to appeal it. They need to really give it the best chance they can. Really what motivated this was a couple things. One is, I mentioned I'm an economist. I had read a study that shows that an applicant who gets professional assistance in filling out these forms is 71% more likely to be approved at that application stage, not at the appeal stage. So not have to wait those years to get approved. So really good evidence that if you just can give people good advice, they're going to have better outcomes in this process. The other thing that's obviously happening in the world is technology just makes it possible to provide some level of support at a fraction of the cost. So there are, great legal aids and social workers and some tons of disability attorneys who do help people with applications, but it's hard to scale that to 70% of people don't get any assistance. So millions of people are not getting that support. So we're really trying to make it scalable to give people some support through this process. The other thing that our company does and our technology does is use the messaging platforms and other technology to try and help people beyond that initial application. So unlike some benefits, it's not a quick process. You apply, you get the application in, you're going to have to go through an attestation process. You'll often get supplementary requests for information from Social Security. They may request that you see one of their doctors to give you an evaluation. And if you don't comply with any of those steps, they can deny or delay your case. So we're also really trying to help people through that process so they get all the way through, get to a decision, and then even appeal if they really need to. Wanted to give you just a flavor of how we do that. I'll show you some of the features of our product. So one section in that 72-page application, you are asked to give details of all of the jobs you've had in the 5 years before you became disabled. And there's about 60 odd questions about every job. They want to know, how many hours did you sit, stand, walk, crawl, crouch, kneel, use your arms at shoulder height, use your arms above shoulder height? Did you use one arm or two arms? How many pounds did you lift? It's this incredibly tedious, kind of confusing. I don't know how many hours I sat, and you might have had 5 jobs in the period before there. So what we do is we know that what Social Security is doing is basically benchmarking these jobs against public data about what job requirements are. So what we're going to do is ask you what your job title is. We're going to look it up in that data. We're going to use a mix of, just data processing and also generative AI to actually suggest answers for most of these questions, which almost always are right? We see people accept about 80% of these, which indicates it is saving them time. It's helping them get through that tedious application, which they might otherwise give up on. And then we also see people will change 20% of them. We try and make it easy. If you don't want to type on a phone, because that's a real pain, you can just click the button, record your voice. It'll transcribe what you're saying, and just try and make it easy to get through this really long, lengthy, difficult application. So that's one thing we do throughout, is just answer the questions we can answer for you. It's a very repetitive application. So we'll try and help you out and get it done. The other thing we do is we offer real-time feedback to try and avoid some of the common mistakes that we see people are making. Just to give a little color to this, we've had multiple attorneys tell us this, is people will get denied for something like, you have mobility issues, and there is a question that says, do you have any pets? And you say, yes, I have a dog. Okay, carry on, keep filling out the application. What will happen is a case manager is going to say, you have mobility issues, you have a dog, you must walk the dog, so let's deny your application and let you appeal that. And this, I know it sounds crazy, but this actually does happen. What you need to do is you need to write, I have a dog, but my kids walk the dog because I'm unable to do that, and give that level of specificity. So here, what we're doing in this example is, maybe you worked in construction, you were teaching people how to use the cement mixer and the chop saw and making sure they don't cut their fingers off. And yeah, you were supervising that. That makes sense. But the way Social Security understands this, if you're a supervisor, you have a transferable skill. So even if you can no longer do your job as a laborer, you're a manager. So you can get another job, and that can be a reason to deny the application. So we're going to flag to you, unless you hired and fired, you should answer no to this question. So just try and catch these more common mistakes that people are making throughout the application. Try to avoid that initial denial and save them multiple years of waiting for their application to be processed. Another aspect of our platform is we actually work both directly with applicants, but we also work with advocates, whether that's lawyers or social workers or others. And we have a couple hundred checks we've programmed in to try and catch anything that might hold up an application, that might require a bit more expertise than the applicant might have. So, for example, to be qualified for the SSI program, you have to have limited assets. If you have two or more cars, that actually makes you ineligible in terms of that asset threshold. But what we often see is people will, there's two cars out in the driveway. Maybe one is from your parents. Maybe your partner has a car too. And you're like, yeah, I have two cars. But unless those are specifically the titles for those cars are in your name, those don't count. So we're just going to flag for an advocate anything we see that might potentially be an issue in the application. You can go back to the applicant, correct it if it's incorrect, clarify, figure out what to do about it. So just try and catch all these mistakes before they lead to that huge delay later on. I guess there's this question here, which is, why are we here and what's the connection to healthcare? Well, I mentioned there's definitely some benefits in terms of health outcomes. I'm guessing a lot of you hear people ask about disability benefits. Perhaps you provide some support for them. Really, we do work with some healthcare organizations and really view this as really critical to our mission, which is trying to actually support that 70% of people who aren't getting any professional assistance with their application. What we learned early on is a lot of people, about 40% of applicants, first hear about disability benefits through a doctor, or through a medical social worker, or through someone in a healthcare organization. The other thing which is really important is by working with healthcare providers, we actually can help people when they become eligible. So when they've had an accident or a diagnosis or their conditions are getting worse, rather than what typically happens, which is people wait a year, they might run down almost all their savings before they even start to apply. So we really love working with healthcare organizations because that's helping us really augment our impact and the scale of people that we can work with. How we do it is we have both a very simple screening tool. It takes about 3 or 5 minutes, and it's just asking those basic questions to figure out, do you meet the financial criteria for the program? Do you have any chance? And then if someone does look like they meet those criteria, we then can directly transition them to kind of our core application, which is this TurboTax-like experience, guides them through the full application process, gives them that guidance, gives them those suggestions, makes it a bit easier for them. And then we can actually upload that and file that to Social Security. We also work directly with applicants, as I mentioned, as well as with social workers or others on a more white label platform basis. And then the final thing is we are authorized to represent people before Social Security and also have a network of very vetted disability attorneys that we can connect people to if they really do have a super complicated case, or if they need support at the appeals process. We can make sure that they're getting all the way through the process and to a final decision and exhausting their options there. You all are welcome to go check it out. It's at intake.benny.co is where that process starts. Also, I'll leave this up. I'll answer any questions in the chat. But if anyone has questions or wants to learn more in the future, there's my email. So yeah, thanks for hearing me out. Looks like there's a couple questions, but keep them coming. I'd love to hear what you all think. Yeah, so that's a great question. How did we learn? What are the things that cause people to get denied, and how to bake that into the software? So what we did very intentionally is before we started working directly with applicants themselves, our early days of the product was as software just for disability attorneys. So the way that worked is disability attorneys they don't really like filling out the application. So they would send their clients to us and we would assist them through the application. And as a result of that, we've processed thousands and thousands of applications with attorneys. And we would talk to them and ask them and say, hey, what do we need to do? What looks wrong about this application? And then we build that logic into the software where we can basically kind of channel a little bit of the attorney's voice and say, oh yeah, you don't want to answer the question this way. Let's answer it another way. That's a really great question. Just looking through the chat. Any other questions out there? Yeah, that is true. It's a very hard process. I mean, to be honest, um, even Social Security's website, if you just look at it on a mobile phone, it's almost impossible. I think, as much as I love our fancy technology and it actually helps, we get so much value just from allowing people to do this on a phone, right? It's something, but that helps too, in addition to the suggestions and guidance and stuff. Um, Customer types that would be helpful to connect with. Yeah, I think really what, our goal is just to be a resource for anyone who wants to file an application. We believe we can make it easier than them doing it themselves. We believe we can help them generate a better application. Really, I think anyone who, that's kind of our filter is pretty broad. Anyone who wants um, to have assistance, we're happy to work with them. Let's see. But yeah, I guess Jeremy, I would happily, great name by the way, happily connect later. Would love to find ways to how to connect with people. But yeah, I think it really depends on, I know a lot of you all are working with people who are probably, good candidates. Depending on the support you offer, we'd love to chat with you all, and if it makes sense to send people our way,